Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, the show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined by someone who I feel like I should have spoken to a long time ago, but our paths have just never quite crossed, which is very, very strange given the number of mutual friends and organizations we've worked with and these things. So I'm very, very excited to introduce the absolutely wonderful Lyndon Howson. Lyndon is a author, hedgehog enthusiast, and conservationist, and a member of the Chester Zoo Youth Board. And today he's here to talk about all of those things, plus how young people can take up leadership roles, influence change, and make a difference in the world of conservation. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lyndon.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, really looking forward to talking today.
Yes, no, thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm always like, I feel like it's been a while since I've had a member of the youth board on, so I'm excited to hear kind of like updates about that, what's going on. I'm excited to hear about everything you're doing. Whenever somebody who is younger than me publishes a book, I'm always like, how have we found time to do that and the skills to do that? So that's incredible. I'm like, and hedgehogs, which I think will upset you, have never ever come up on the podcast before. So
Really?
now is your chance to really sell them to people when we get into that as well. So I think it's going to be a good show. But before we get into all of that, I guess like the first thing I always like to ask people is, could you introduce yourself? Because I go through LinkedIn and see Facebook and Instagram and whatever, but yeah, I think you know yourself better. So could you introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yes. So, hi everyone. So, as Jack's already said, my name's Lyndon Howson. So, I'm currently a Masters of Research student at the University of Chester, and I'm actually doing my research project on looking at the role that education providers play in the conservation of hedgehogs, which is absolutely perfect for me because I am very much a hedgehog enthusiast. Alongside that, I'm also part of Chester Zoo's Youth Board, and I'm the lead for our external and internal working group, which basically allows me to be on this podcast today, which is really exciting. Alongside that, I have also managed to write a book in my spare time. I don't know how that's happened, but it came about. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything there is to know about me.
Perfect. I think that's there's a lot there to know. So we've got some time, but we'll try and dive into all of those different aspects. And I suppose but before we do, I feel like we always go in conservation. We always, because we wear many hats and we talk about many things and we do kind of like all these things, we kind of forget sometimes to say why we got into nature and why we love nature in the first place. And I think like it's such an important thing to think about, right? Because we're like, oh, how do we inspire other people? What were our stories? Like, I'm always intrigued to know. So, I always like to ask, like, how did we get to this point where you're doing the masters, where you're on the youth board, where you're doing this? What was the thing that inspired you to get into nature, conservation, these things in the first place?
I must admit, I think for me, nature's always been something I've always been a part of. So I've grown up my entire life in the Lake District, and I've always been very lucky that from like the age of 7, I'd just be out in the woods pretty much every single day after school. And we were really lucky where I grew up in Grange Over Sands. We used to have a population of red squirrels. So me and my friends used to like go out into the woods and try find the squirrels. And I still remember, I think I was about 9 years old, where we started looking at like bigger species, and we have quite a few like red deer around us. So we're just like, oh, it'd be really nice to see one in the wild for like the first time ever. And so we had a lesson where we actually got to learn about the different footprints of some of the animals. And so we went into the woods and we actually went looking for the footprints. And I think we spent, it must have been about 4 hours on like a Saturday afternoon trekking through trying to find footprints. And then we actually came across a red deer. And I think for me, just seeing like animals like that, which is just pure native species, it's just incredible to see that and appreciate it for what it is, because it doesn't have to be something that's like absolutely magnificent and incredible from somewhere broad or somewhere really unique. It's just like the really native species is something that I've always been really interested by. I think because I've always grown up with it, I've always had like that passion there. So as I've like gotten older, I found new and like more unique ways to actually be a part of looking after that wildlife and also like sharing information about it. whether it be like going out to schools and doing workshops, doing like talks, joining podcasts like today, just anything I can talk about wildlife, I'm all for.
Yeah, and that's such a magical, like, that's such a nice, like, thing. Because I think there's sometimes this, like, perception in people's brains that nature is far away, right? We go
Yeah,
on, like, and especially at school age, right? Where, like, it's often like you'll be shown films and documentaries and stuff of all these things all around the world that are beautiful and magical, incredible. And then when they take you on school trips for things like biology or whatever, they take you to botanic gardens or they'll take you to zoos where a lot of the plants are from the UK, but a lot of them are from around the world. A lot of the animals are from around the world. A lot of these things, and so people fall in love with these things that are less familiar to them almost, and they forget the magic of actually there's a woods down there with deer and there's badgers and there's hedgehogs and there's birds in your garden and things. So that's actually a really nice like starting point. Like yes, and nice to know it was a constructive because I feel like when people in their teenage years say, "Oh yeah, we're going down to the woods to like have like," usually it's causing chaos or setting things on fire. So like a wholesome activity, an alternative, which I quite appreciate.
I was gonna say it definitely couldn't be more countryside if I tried, could it? Be like my afternoon spent in the woods just following animals. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Exactly, exactly. That's incredible. That is incredible. I know, and I guess like then yes, so like and it totally tracks, right? Of like you go and then you see these things, you become inspired by them, you spend more time, you go out again and again and again, and eventually like yeah, there's that pipeline of like falling in love with something into wanting to protect it and kind of value it and kind of show everyone else that it's amazing. And yeah, and that brings you to I guess the first of the projects and things that you work on that we're going to discuss, which is the Chester Zoo Youth Board.
Yeah,
And so for people who don't know, we've had Connor and Felix from the youth board on previously a few years ago now though, so maybe we've probably got new listeners. We've probably there might be some people who listened to that a couple of years ago but now kind of have forgotten, and I'm sure there's new stuff going on from your end as well. So do you want to introduce what that project is and tell us like a little bit about what the youth board does and all these sorts of things?
yeah, definitely. So, I think it's really exciting with the youth board because we were the first UK charity zoo youth board to actually be established. So we were first established in 2020, and since then, obviously, there's been quite a lot of changes because I think the really amazing part of the youth board is because our members are usually on for 2 years, they can extend if they want to, but it's usually a 2 year term. And we're always having new members joining, and it creates the youth board to continually like evolve and adapt to who's actually on the board. And it's really nice for us because it gives us the opportunity to reach out and engage and support the zoo in activities that we might not have considered before with previous boards. So it's really nice to see that adaptability and that change in there. And I think at the moment we've got 16 youth board members, so we have capacity up to 18, but we've got 16 at present, which is amazing. And yeah, we work in an advisory capacity to the board of trustees at the zoo. And then we also get to support the zoo with various different projects and initiatives they're working on, and basically just ensuring that youth voice and youth opinions is included in pretty much everything the zoo's trying to achieve. And I think it's amazing how much the zoo actually supports us and how much they work with us to make sure that we're not just sharing the voice of young people, but we're also making sure that we're listening to it and we're actually like trying to make it as inclusive as possible. So yeah, it's really, really amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that's like, yeah, that's it's fantastic, and it's something that like I can't believe that was 5 years ago, like half a decade of youth board is actually it's crazy to me. Like, yeah, it's crazy because it's like I remember like the first year that it kind of they ran the what was at that time the youth symposium, and now I think youth summit like the name has slightly
Yeah,
changed.
Youth
Uh,
Summit now.
Yes, and like I remember going and meeting all of these amazing people and being so inspired. And it's just crazy that that was 5 years ago. I'm feeling slightly. I'm like, okay, that's made me feel quite old.
Are you feeling a bit nostalgic now?
Yeah, yeah. But no, it's fabulous, and that's actually absolutely wonderful. Like in terms of like the things that you've worked on, though, like I guess like I know what they were doing back then. What are you guys up to now? What are some of the projects you're working on? Some of the things that you're chatting about?
So I think the biggest project we work on every single year, as you've already highlighted, is the Youth Summit. It's definitely a key event for the Youth Board each year. So for anyone who actually doesn't know what our Youth Summit is, it's usually a 2 day event that happens in between October or November. And we have various different talks, workshops, we have various different activities and like networking opportunities. And it's all young speakers. And then the amazing part is they all come from so many different backgrounds. So we have people who come from like through conservation podcasts like yourself. We have people who do zookeeping. We have people who work for like Natural England. We've got so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and it's such a great opportunity for us as young people to actually see these people in those roles that we think, oh gosh, we'd love to do that one day. And when you hear the stories of like how they got into their positions, how they got to where they are, I think the amazing part is you realise that conservation isn't just like a one-trick pony. There's so many different ways you can go about it, and I think for a lot of young people, it shows them there's that flexibility there. And as us as a youth board, it's like a great way for us to see actually we've all come from so many different backgrounds because we've got students, we've got marketeers, we've got people who are in the energy sector, and it's like we all have that one common theme, and it just shows how there is so many different avenues to go down. And then I think alongside the Youth Summit, the other item that we work on continually with the zoo team is we have the Youth Network. So this is basically a network which was designed, developed, and launched last year, and it allows any young people who are interested to come and take part on the days when we're doing various activities. And this could be coming into the zoo to meet some of our team there. So you could be meeting someone from the education team, someone from the zoo rangers, maybe one of our keepers, and they get to find out like about that career, how they got to where they are, and ask those really important questions of how they could maybe pursue a career like that one day. And I think it's really nice for us to work on that because we're supporting young people in finding a way for them to sort of get into the sector. It's really amazing to be a part of something like that. And I think, like I've said previously, the support from the entire zoo team for our youth board, and pretty much whenever we come up with an idea, it's some way to sort of empower some youth in any which way. They always jump on board to try and make that happen, which is incredible. So I think that's what we all gain from it. It's just incredibly rewarding. And it's surprising the amount of information you learn in such a short time.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant, and I think that's fantastic, and I think it is. It's one of those things that what I quite like about it, and I think I talked about this a little bit on the previous podcast actually, because I had Emma Greenwood on, who worked on the kind of Changemakers toolkit for Chester Zoo, and we were talking about these kind of how projects need to be not just youth led can be really important and is really important, but also developing that kind of respect of like this for you from your perspective is a board position that you kind of have a certain capacity for, and you require the capacity and the support of the zoo and the organization to kind of lift both, like a rising tide raises all ships, right, to lift each other up and kind of bring each other up. And like it takes a really strong good partnership, right, of these kind of
Definitely.
different capacities and abilities to contribute. And I think it's a really nice example of that, a really really nice example of that. Yeah, I guess like if we circle back a little bit, because I think like there's so much there we can get into in terms of like really interesting, wonderful things.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think just to kind of again complement the youth summit, because I think it's a fantastic thing of like, yeah, the way that it is set up to be networking, but in a way where it's not like networking is a scary adult term in my brain of like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what really strict professionals who work in business, they network and they do this. Actually, no, networking is so important in conservation. And the good thing about conservation and nature-based careers is we're so nice and we all like
Yeah.
want to get along. And like not to be big-headed, but everybody in our I've yet to meet a conservation person who I'm like, oh god, oh no, like everyone is so lovely. And like what I loved about the youth some I, because because my nostalgically it's symposium, the youth summit is what I really liked about it was like I was meeting people who work in marine conservation, right, climate change activism, people who were 4 or 5 years younger than me who had done all of these amazing things. And you realize suddenly you're like, oh my goodness, there are so many inspiring, amazing people around doing incredible, incredible things. And it was brilliant. So just to kind of like, if anyone's listening to this, like this will obviously be coming out springtime. So keep your eyes on social media and things for, I hope, I'm guessing it will be coming back this year, October, November time. So go.
It's definitely going to be coming back this year, and it's going to be November this year. So we
Exciting.
will be sharing more details very soon. So definitely keep an eye peeled for our social media posts.
Perfect. And I will, yes, I will definitely try and come along to that. Because yeah, it's been a couple years now, and I think I need an excuse. I'm actually coming to Chester Zoo. At time of recording, I'm going to Chester Zoo next week, because I'm in around the area. So I'm going to pop in and be nosy at the new Heart of Africa area because I'm intrigued to see it.
I
But
was going to
yes,
say, you will love it. It is incredible.
I'm very excited. Have you gone and seen it?
I have, yeah, and it definitely blew away any expectations I had. It was so much better than what I thought it was going to be. And yeah, you will absolutely love it. And there's definitely an area you will really enjoy, touching on some of our pangolin conservation work.
Mhm. I have seen the puppet on social media of the pangolin, and I was like, okay, I'm going in. I have to be there. So yeah, and I'm very excited to go because yes, I'm like, and I think I'll pop in. It's the Easter holidays currently, so where we're recording. So I'll go in. I want to come down and visit in the Easter holidays as soon as possible, but I'll come back in November when it's probably quieter and quieten down a little bit, so I can really take my time to go around as well. So I will definitely be down for the youth symposium or youth summit. Oh my goodness, youth summit this year. I am very excited to kind of like come down again. And yeah, and then I guess though in terms of like, and you don't have to wait, especially if I guess if you live around the area, you don't have to wait till November because you mentioned this kind of youth network as well, which sounds like a fantastic opportunity because I work with young people at Edinburgh Zoo at the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, and they're all trying to work out their careers and career paths. And so we try and get guest speakers in to kind of talk to them. And I've seen firsthand the power that has on like, oh, I know I want to be a vet, or I want to be a public, like a zookeeper, or I want to be even just somebody who goes out into the world and does a quote unquote normal job, right? That isn't like a nature based one, but I want to bring some kind of like conservation into it. So that's fantastic. That sounds so exciting. How can people get
Yeah.
involved in that if they're kind of listening?
So for anyone who's listening, if you type in Chester Youth Network, it will take you to a page on our Chester website where they can register their email, and then we send out a newsletter with all the updates of any upcoming opportunities on there. And a really nice part to that newsletter when it does come out is we share a lot of the work which we have young people share with us. So it could be young people that have gone on and delivered a talk in their local area, or maybe gone out and done like a local litter pick, and it's a really nice opportunity to just stay connected with other young people. I think quite often, sometimes conservation, when you're just starting out, it can seem like it's just yourself. And I think that's a really amazing part to that youth network. It connects so many people together. And I think definitely making the most of the opportunities to come in when we do have the career days and when you can find out a bit more about obviously the various different conservation careers, because as you've highlighted, it doesn't have to be you have to be conservation focused the whole time. Some people do it in the free time, and some people are really happy, say for example if they were working in one of our retail stores or food and beverage team, and for them that could be the perfect job. And the amazing part is that's still contributing to the conservation work that we do. And yeah, it's just a really nice opportunity. And I think that youth network has been such an amazing thing to see how it's developed and how it's grown. And when we get the young people in and they actually do get to experience like behind the scenes in some of the areas of the zoo, hearing from the zookeepers themselves, I think it just ignites that passion even more. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just lovely to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hearing those like I think like there's something about these careers where you think like, oh, they must be really like oh, like I don't know, it's putting a I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. It's like putting a human, right? A human voice and a human perspective and making it be like, this is real. It's not something that like because if you Google career advice or you do these things, it becomes so impersonal and it becomes kind of like just a flattened case study, right? Whereas meeting people is so much more valuable and inspiring, especially because they have all their own interesting, funny, hilarious, but inspiring kind of stories as well. It's really interesting.
Definitely. And I think it's amazing when you get to hear those stories because you start to see actually every single person who might be in the same role all came in with like so many different perspectives. Like we have some that have came in to be zookeepers from our internships or apprenticeships, and then we have some that might have had like backgrounds from completely different sectors and then came into the zoo and started a career in one area and then branched out into another. And I think that's the best part to conservation. There's so much flexibility between like all of the roles. It's like what you do in one area is so transferable to another. And it's really nice when you hear those stories and you actually start to realize, actually, this is something I can achieve. Because I know when I was young, I was just like, oh, one day I want to be a zookeeper. And I still remember my teacher saying to me, oh, well, it's very niche. You'll be lucky if you get to work in that sector. Let's find you like a proper job. And I think ever since then, I've just pursued any opportunity to get as close to nature as possible. And it's like you will find your own way in there eventually. And when you do, it's definitely really rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's yeah. It's brilliant, and it's yeah, and it's exactly yes. It's fantastic, and even when I think about like my friends who work at Edinburgh Zoo up here, is kind of like yeah, there's people in membership, there's people who work in marketing, there's people who work in communications, there's people who work in the retail, and like these things. Like there is literally and that's just in a zoo, right? And that doesn't even mean to say that like you don't have to be in a zoo setting. You could go off and apply or in your free time or do these things. Like there's so many different ways of doing it. So it's fantastic. Um, I wonder, is there any other before I was gonna kind of ask about how like take the converse I suppose like move the conversation on to like talking about um some of the kind of like more like how can people get involved like in a more kind of maybe not even necessarily with Chester, but more in leadership and these kind of things. But before we kind of zoom out a little bit more, is there any other specific projects or things we haven't talked about where you're like, oh, actually, I should mention this as well? Or are we,
No, I was going to say, I think they're pretty much our main projects that we're working on. So definitely the youth network is a big one that we're trying to grow. We've got an amazing group of young people connected to it so far. But I think definitely any way we can get more young people part of it because there's so much they can gain from it. And often the events when we do them, we don't charge for them. They can just come for free and participate. So it's a really great opportunity to make the most of that. And then the youth summit, always a highlight. And I think, as you said earlier, just like having that it's not as formal as conferences. And I think that's the best part about being youth led. It has got that just like relaxed tone to it. So I think people realizing it isn't just that you come, you sit in a chair, you listen to some talks and you leave. There's so many like creative avenues and like when you get to mingle with each other. And it's literally talking to the people who actually just come in attendance. When you hear the stuff they're doing, like even myself, when I hear the work of what they're achieving, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I want to be you. Even though you're younger than me, I wish I could like accomplish something like that. And I think that's the amazing part to it. Like you hear so many amazing stories, and it just makes you leaving thinking, right, what can I do? How can I push
Mhm.
this even more?
Yep. Yep. Like, yeah, it's that way of like, yeah. And I walk away and I'm always like, I'm so impressed, but it's never like a, you know, that way where sometimes people reel off like a CV of work or a thing, and you go, oh, I'm never going to
Yeah,
be that. But it's not that because it's such a positive environment. It's like, oh wow, like that's incredible. I'm so inspired. I want to do this, that, and the next thing. Like
yeah.
it's brilliant.
It just
Um,
empowers you.
yeah. Yeah. And also you will make incredible friendships of like I am still friends with I think pretty much everyone I met at that first symposium. I went up and down the UK visiting people for a while like and now yeah, like a lot of people that I've met have now been on the podcast or like I've worked with on other projects or this that and the next thing. So it's actually it's yeah, it's a beautiful environment. So big yes, big shout out to that. And when it comes, I hopefully I will be free in some. I'll keep every weekend in November free so I can come down. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, but no, that's perfect. And I guess then I suppose like what we're talking about now is very, I suppose, Chester focused, right, and very focused on the area. I maybe I don't know. People do travel to that youth summit from all over the UK, but like in terms of like maybe if you're listening and you feel like you can't travel to Chester, you can't be involved in these things, I think an important discussion we need to have, right, is like this is a good case study. It's maybe not something you can be involved in necessarily if you're in another country or these things, but it's a great case study of how you can kind of take on a leadership role, drive real change, like do all of these amazing things and kind of get involved in these policy like how the zoo is understanding things, how organizations are understanding and acting. So I wondered if we could kind of zoom out and if someone was listening to this going, I wish I could have that like I want to do what they're doing or kind of like how like yeah, how would you what advice would you give someone who wants to be in one of these kind of more like yeah, driving positions in conservation?
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say, I think it's quite funny because I can actually reflect on it from being outside of it in a way because when I was younger, the area I grew up in, obviously, it's about as rural can be. So trying to find these opportunities to actually advocate and share your voices back then used to be really difficult. But I think for anyone who's listening who is trying to think how can they be a part of it, whether it be in their own area or with like a national organisation, I think the best thing to do is have an idea of what you're passionate about. Because I think when it comes to conservation, sometimes people feel as though they have to do everything. And it never has to be that way. It's like if you're really passionate about local governance, or you're really passionate about a particular species, or if you're really passionate about marine life, I think definitely following that passion and then looking from that at opportunities with organisations where your passions align. So I think that's why I chose Chester Zoo, because so many of my passions align with the work that they're doing, and they have so much incredible work, not just with obviously zoo animals, but also with native species, which is where my passions start to overlap with a lot of their work. But I think for people in their own areas, maybe look and see if you have local wildlife groups, looking to see maybe if you've got like a local charity you can maybe get some experience with. And it's always just about reaching out and making first contact. And I know one thing which always surprised me is no matter how many times I reached out to people, and even if it was a large organisation, I'd be like, oh, they'll never get back to me. But it surprised me every time, all of them always reply. And I think it's because people are so keen to hear from young people and they just want to try and support them in any way which they can. And I think any young person who's really passionate and wants to go into this sector or go into this sort of advocacy role, it's definitely worth seeing what opportunities are in your area, reaching out to local contacts. And it's going to sound very niche, but I did it when I was younger and I thought it was brilliant. I went to my local town hall and to see what charities we had registered in the area or what community groups to see what I could partake in. And that's actually how I first got into governance, because from that I found out there was an opening on our town council. And I remember talking to the councillors at the time, being like, "Who can apply? Like, what limits are there?" And they were just like, "You just need to be 18 and have to live in the area." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I remember going, applying, thinking, "Okay, it's on a whim. I'd be the youngest person by at least 30 years, so why not push the boat out?" And I actually managed to get in, and I was elected onto the council. And I think for me, that's where my passion for local governance really grew, because I got to see from that sort of community level how these initiatives are rolled out. And it's like from there, you're able to work with local community groups, work with the schools. There's just so many ways to go about it. But I definitely think look at the resources that you actually have around you first. And then you can start looking more nationally if you have got that flexibility to. But I definitely think there's a lot of support from local organisations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you are passionate about something, the chances are you're not alone, right, in that
Yeah,
passion. And there has got to be, and there's usually an organization out there or a charity that's been set up or a group that maybe doesn't know what they're doing yet, but is looking to start doing something. And like, there's always somebody looking for something. And like, I think, yeah, just putting your name out there is that first, and trying to and looking and going, okay, what's actually here is that first step. And then, yeah, as your example demonstrates, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on, this is real. Like, this is, I don't
yeah,
know, when we talk about careers, especially like when I think back to like when I was getting my first jobs and things like out of high school, and these, like, I applied to work in an aquarium and I was like, I'll never get that, like I said, that's just not going to be my thing. I'll apply, but there's no way I'm going to get it. And then if I hadn't applied for that, the trajectory of where my life had gone would have been completely different because of these kind of things. Like, I wouldn't have ended up at the zoo. I probably wouldn't have ended up doing a master's in conservation. Wouldn't have ended up doing the podcast, right? Just on that one decision of like looking around and going, hang on, there's a job opportunity here. Let's go for it. Like,
and
there's, yeah,
it's
sorry.
definitely that thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Where as young people, sometimes we can sort of hear that voice in our head of going, "No, you can't do it. You've not got the experience. You shouldn't apply." And sometimes you can just be your own worst enemy. Whereas if you have the thought of nothing ventured, nothing gained, then it takes the pressure away. And when you actually do achieve these things, like you said, like the trajectory it can send you on is incredible. And it's like it can really change what potentially career path you're going to end up in. And yeah, I think it's a really powerful thing to sort of explain to people where if you have got that passion, even if you don't think you're going to get it, apply. I mean, there's no harm in reaching out and making contact. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're just going to get a thing saying, "Sorry, we won't be taking it forward." that's not the end of the world. There's so many other organisations and jobs out there, and I think it's just remembering the positives in there of it is worth that first attempt just to see.
Yes, yes, and like bringing it back to the youth board, perfect example of that was Chelsea, right? Like, I don't know,
Yes.
was she? Did you work with Chelsea, or were you like?
So I was with Chelsea pretty much in our last meeting before she left, which so that's my first meeting, her last meeting. So I never had much overlap,
hmm But like,
unfortunately.
oh, I loved Chelsea because she is just one of those people who like lights up a room when she's in it. She's brilliant, and she's I think a perfect example of that, right? Of where she like example from the youth board, applied for the youth board, was on it, and now I think is working for the RSPB, and often talks about the fact that she probably wouldn't have done that, right, had she not done something like the youth board. So these opportunities and trajectories, like it's not just like. Yeah, I mean, I talk about like what I do like a lot, but like there's so many examples of like other people who have done the same thing, right? And yeah, you don't necessarily, yeah, even if it's just a passing interest that you have and you're listening to this because, oh, I like listening to podcasts about whatever, but then you apply, it could, just go for it. It'll change the way that you consider what you're able to do, and it's fantastic. Um, I wonder is if people are interested in terms of kind of like um, kind of pursuing these things, right? They put themselves out there, like having been in these kind of um, roles yourself now. Are there lessons that you've learned along the way where you're like, I wish someone had told me X, Y, or Z? I wish like is there anything like that?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is I've always been the one where if any opportunity comes up, I will throw my name at it, just because I'm go with the logic of nothing ventured, nothing gained. But I think the biggest thing I've learned from that is sometimes you can actually take on a bit too much, and I think it's the realization of remembering how much free time you have and thinking to yourself, how much of my free time do I want to dedicate to this? Because very quickly, what is still an amazing opportunity in some of the roles I've held previously, it became pretty much like a full time job. And it's very much like that with me for my Hedgehog project. So, I mean, that started as just very casual, very relaxed. And I wanted to drive that so much because I had so much passion there that I took on so much with it. And it very much took up all of my free time. And it was realizing actually it doesn't have to be as intensive as what I'm making it. And by reevaluating and refiguring it, it sort of took the pressure away and it took any stress that was associated to it. And then it makes it back fun again. So I think it's remembering like you don't have to do everything. That's the best part of being a part of like a group or a board is you've got other members to lean on and it's not all down to you. It's a team effort and it's remembering to work in that team and just sort of bringing the best out of each other. And I think one thing that can happen sometimes is if you have people who are like really, really strong and confident, sometimes you have other people that might not feel as comfortable stepping forwards. So I think if you are that person in either capacity, it's about working in collaboration with each other so you can bring the best out of each other. So sometimes that stronger and more confident person should be there to support someone who might not be as confident. And I think it's a great opportunity where you learn so much from each other.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. Especially because, yeah, like there'll be people like us who like to talk, and there'll be people who can go and do the promo of whatever the project is. There'll be people who are better at the statistics or the maths or the writing or the kind of written, like the Facebook posts or the Instagram or the photography or the sciencey bit of counting and forms and registering things in Excel spreadsheets and all these things. Like, yeah, learn. Yeah, I think that's you do not have to be a jack of all trades. Like, you will probably become one over time of like you will learn little bits of everything, but you don't have to be an expert and you don't have to do it all on your own. Is I think, yeah, fantastic
Exactly.
advice.
Teamwork
Yeah.
makes the dream work.
Yep. Yep. No, that is perfect. I think it also like it transitions us nicely into like the next question that I was going to ask you, which is kind of every show at the end, I kind of wrap up by asking people three quick fire questions, right? About like what their favorite underappreciated species is and all these things if we focus on a project rather than like a species specific episode. But I feel like asking it in a quick fire way at the end would not do justice to the work that you do and the kind of love that you have for an animal you have just mentioned, which is, of course, the hedgehog. And so I wondered, like, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What is I'm going to frame it in the same way I frame it for everyone, but you can. I know it's a silly question because I know the answer. Lyndon, what is your favorite underappreciated species?
Well, as we've already highlighted, my favourite underappreciated species has definitely got to be the hedgehog. I think there's just something about it, and it's like I remember when I was little, we used to have hedgehogs coming into our back garden all the time, and it's just such a unique animal. It's our only spiky mammal in the UK, and because it's nocturnal, you rarely get to see it. So when you do, it's just like this whole new world of like this animal you never thought could exist. And I think every day, no matter how long I've been working with hedgehogs, I still learn something new. And I think that's the best part to like any wildlife. But yeah, they're just absolutely incredible.
That's fantastic, and I think a perfect, because they are one of those ones that like when you see them, you like, even now, like at 27 years old, I still get that like childlike spark in me of like, there's a hit, like wow, like there's a hitch. I'm gonna like have to sit and watch what happens now if it, because they come out at night and they're like these mystical kind of like things that you don't see very often, right? They just kind of exist in these kind of in the darkness sometimes, and you occasionally get lucky like and spot one. I think they do have that kind of, that energy of like magic and excitement around them. So I totally
Definitely.
totally get it. um I wonder, then you mentioned a conservation kind of project that you'd worked on with them. Could you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so it's for the past 3 years, I've been the project coordinator for the Hedgehog Friendly Campus project at the Uni of Chester. So basically, when this opportunity came about, the project was already established for 2 years beforehand, but it had been academic led, and due to COVID, it was primarily just online. So the opportunity came about for it to become student led, which, as someone who was missing his touch of home and touch of nature, the opportunity to work with hedgehogs was like an added bonus because in the city there's not as much wildlife around as in the countryside. So I was just like, oh, this could be great. Get to work with my favourite animal, see what happens. And it's probably the best decision I ever made because it really has shaped my entire career. Like, I did not realize how dedicated I would become to this one particular species. And oh, the growth that that project has had. So, when we started, we had 5 volunteers, and straight away we were like, okay, we need to increase our volunteer numbers. And literally in space of that first year, we went from 5 volunteers to having well over 100 student volunteers. And I think seeing that growth was incredible. And then alongside that, because we had so many, we were then able to start like doing things like building hedgehog houses, building hedgehog highways, doing feeding stations. I got to start doing wildlife camera sessions with the students, teaching them how to use them. And then we got involved with the zoo's Hedgehog Watch. So they got to take part in citizen science. And there was so much that was learned from that. And then the amazing part is, after that first year, we went from having zero hedgehogs seen on campus 2 years before we started to then having, I think we had 5 hedgehogs in our first year. And one of them became a favourite of mine. She is called Spot. She is still on campus, and every single year she has little hoglets, and they are just the cutest little bundles of chub you've ever seen. And oh yeah, she's definitely a favourite of mine. You can tell her a mile off. She's got a little pattern on the side of her where her quills are just darker for some reason, so you can spot her on cameras. And that first year, I had an incredible moment with her where I'd gone to do the feeding stations, and she must have came out earlier than usual. And as I got there, it's like towards dusk. She'd fallen to sleep in the feeding station in the entrance of it, and I remember walking towards it, thinking, what is that? Thinking like, what's blocking the way? And it never clicked in my head. Oh wait, that could be a hedgehog. And then I looked, and there was Spot just fast asleep. And what must have happened is she came out early, scoffed all the food we put in earlier that day, and then gone into a bit of a food coma and just fell asleep. So I remember sitting there for like an hour just watching her. And it's, yeah, so mesmerizing when you get to see these species in like so much detail and up close. And that was definitely a personal highlight for me.
I mean, we've all been there. I big relate to to Spot. Like we've all had that day where we've kind of gone to the fridge, opened it, and gone, "Yeah, I'm just gonna eat this or that while I'm just
Yeah.
stood here," and then and then you barely close the door before you're like, "Okay, now I need to go and lie down." Like that's, no, that's fantastic. That is really really fantastic, and amazing that like it's amazing that like again these like youth led things, right, where like it goes to show the value of it, because like in that capacity, right, staff didn't have the time to do the project justice, right, and add like because they were in these kind of roles, where students with the drive, with the interest, with the time that like they can maybe put into it a little bit more, like are able to take that project from something very like small up to something that like there are all these people involved in, and like the ripple effect of that, right? Where like I don't know, where you have these characters and things is fantastic.
Yeah, it's honestly incredible. I think we never expected to see anything near the growth as what we have. And I think it made it very clear how many people in Chester are passionate about hedgehogs because we now deliver like workshops in the local community to local community groups. I get to go out to local schools working with them in setting up hedgehog feeding stations, doing hedgehog cameras. And then I've just started doing some work recently with the brownies and guides. And we've started doing hedgehog trackers and building them and teaching them how to track hedgehogs in their own garden, which was amazing when they started sending photos of the little footprints of hedgehogs. And I was just like, that is definitely a hedgehog. And the excitement from then is just so enthusiastic. It just sort of empowers you to want to do even more. And I think, like you said, it's just the power of youth led initiatives. Like, if you have that passion and you stick with your passion, so much can come from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That is brilliant, and like, and no more deserving of a species than the hedgehog. I think, like, yeah, not like, yeah, magical, mystical, wonderful things. Um,
Definitely.
which also, I suppose, makes them perfect characters for books. Just to throw it out there, like in the in the most shoehorned of segues in, I wondered. Not only are you conserving them, loving them, doing all this stuff with them, like you have also written a book which stars a hedgehog, I believe. Could you tell us about that as well?
It does. So, yeah, very much that actually came about by accident. So, basically, during my dissertation, I kept having moments where I couldn't focus. And for me, I was missing being outside with my hedgehogs. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna start writing a book as a way to sort of relax me during my dissertation time. And bizarre time to do it, which everyone keeps reminding me of. And it was just really amazing because in that moment as I was writing it, it no longer felt like I was sat in the library, I was sat at a computer. It just sort of like put me into the world that I'd
Mhm,
created. And I think that was the most amazing part for me because it sort of became really important for my well-being.
mhm,
And it's amazing to share like such a really like fun and adventurous story with
mhm,
a hedgehog as a main character. He's called Hector, and it's like you follow him on this amazing journey where he basically finds more out about himself and what he believed, and it's showing how he has a lot more power than what he thought he did. And he makes some amazing friends along the way, and yeah, it's just a really, really fun story. And I think no matter how many times I read it over, every time I'm just like, oh, I wonder what happens next. And I think it's just that love for hedgehogs. It just makes me sort of feel as though I'm a part of that world for that little time that I'm reading. But yeah, that comes out on the 26th of May, which is crazy how fast that is approaching. But yeah, it's been an incredible thing to participate in and actually attempt. I still remember when I'd finished the book and I was telling some friends, and it was my family that was just like, "Oh, it reads really well," and I was like, "Oh, thank you," thinking they were just being nice because it's family, and they were like, "Maybe you should like send it off, see if you can get it published." And I thought, you know what, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'll follow my own words there. And so I sent it off, and then just before Christmas, I got an email back from a company who wanted to publish it. And yeah, it's just gone incredibly ever since. We worked on designing the cover, and then yeah, everything's all set. So it's on Amazon and Waterstones, which is absolutely incredible. I still pinch myself because it does not feel real. But yeah, very much an accidental author, but I am very happy because it puts the hedgehogs where they belong on the shelf and it brings the magic of them to any person who wants to read it.
mhm. And I cannot wait to pick it up and have a look. Like, and yeah, like I'm very again like inspired, excited, like intrigued by how you found the time, because like I remember when I had the like excuse, right, of like I had the double incentive to be at my computer of like when I was doing my masters, right,
Yeah.
my dissertation. It was not only like was I working from home on a podcast, which is like fun and less writing anyway, so maybe I should have been writing. It was also during the pandemic, so I had no excuse to not be in doing something productive like that. So I'm like, oh, I missed my opportunity to write a book. There's my excuse. I just, oh well, I don't know. I'll come up with something eventually. I feel like There's definitely a book and a pangolin though, and then there could be a nice crossover at some point. Hedgehogs, pangolins. There's a crossover of
Definitely,
cute,
they can go on an
bizarre.
adventure.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic, and yes, alongside, I'll say as well, alongside all the youth board information and things, I'll pop a link in the description of the episode for Waterstones and Amazon, is what you said. So yes, to the book. So yes, I don't think you've actually said what it's called.
Oh, sorry. It's called the Blight. It's called the Blight's End. So basically, it's Hector going on a journey to basically try and save his magical forest from this darkness that's sort of changing it and twisting it. It's very magical, very fantastical. Is my only way to describe it, and yeah, it's very immersive.
Exciting. So I will, yes, I will put a link to that in the description. So then we can send people off if they're intrigued, if they want to know more, to go and find that. Um, I guess then I'm also going to be cheeky because like you work in a zoo. I'm going to say one last. I'm going to ask you for a quick fire answer this time.
Yeah.
But Chester Zoo is home to all kinds of bizarre, wonderful, underappreciated things. And I like when I go, I see the preference for the orangutans and the jaguars and the things. So if you give one of those as your answer, like that's okay. But I'm going to encourage you to pick something a bit odder. What is your favorite underappreciated animal at Chester Zoo?
I think thankfully this is a very unique animal, but for me it has always got to be the binturong. I think there is just something
Hmm.
incredible about them. Their
Hmm.
nickname's the bear cat, and they are just amazing. When you smell the smell of a binturong, it is just incredible.
Uh-huh.
It's like smelling like popcorn. Oh, I love it.
Yep, I that is 100% the correct choice. They have never been mentioned before. They should have been. I was trying to find a charity the other day that I could have on the podcast interview about them because I like we have also just got a new Binturong at Edinburgh Zoo, Tenzin, who is absolutely charming beyond all levels of charming. He's just the sweetest like little thing, and like they're just so they're just fantastic animals, and I don't think a lot of people know. But if for people who don't know, a binturong is essentially, if you imagine something like a raccoon or it looks kind of like a red panda, almost like that kind of shape up a tree, but black with these long whiskers, kind of pointed nose. They're but cuter. I'm making it sound really horrible, but like really
They
cute.
are really cute.
And yeah, because you at Chester, you have them in with the sun bears, right? They're like in,
We do, yeah.
yeah.
So I always think the best place to see them is everyone always looks on the outdoor habitats, but definitely look at their indoor housing. And usually you'll see them like climbing around in there, or sometimes they fall to sleep in the little walkthrough. So quite often that is the prime area to actually find them. But I think when people do see them, they're just like, okay, that is not a bear. What am I looking at? Because they sort of forget there's other animals in there. But yeah, they are absolutely amazing. And I think every time I go for just a day out, I have to go and find them.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. And I will be doing exactly the same thing. Even though we now have them back at Edinburgh Zoo, I will be doing the same thing when I'm visiting next week, which I'm very excited for. Um, so yes, I guess then the last question I have for you, just to wrap up, is of course like if people have listened to this and are excited, interested, intrigued, like I'll put links to all of the kind of things we've talked about in the description of the episode. But is there how can people keep up to date with you and all of the work that you and Chester and all these amazing things that we've talked about? Where can people keep up to date?
I think if they wanted to keep up to date with any of the things that I'm personally doing, best way is obviously through LinkedIn. That's probably my favourite social media because it's always positive. Or if you're on Instagram, I do go by the name of Mr. Hedgehog UK. So very original name there. So that's where I share all of my work. But for anyone interested with anything to do with our youth board or anything with the youth network or Chester Zoo, definitely just checking out the websites, checking out LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We are very on top of it when it comes to sharing and promoting these opportunities. So definitely think it's worth having a look and pursuing if you have got the capacity to, because there's definitely a lot to gain.
That is perfect. And I will also add into that project that I worked on with Chester Zoo recently. If you're listening to this and maybe not able to come to the Youth Summit or not able to join the network or do these things, Chester Zoo has also just produced a Changemakers Toolkit, is what it's called, which is filled with amazing information. To do with how to basically any way you want to be involved in the nature and conservation space, it's in there. If you're interested in craftivism, if you're interested in protesting, if you're interested in producing podcasts, I produced a section on that. It's filled with amazing case studies, how to guides, amazing things. So I'll also put a link to that in the description. And if you want to learn more about that, having listened to this, go back to the last episode of the podcast, episode 107, with the amazing Emma Greenwood, who talked all about that as well. So just since it's all in the Chester universe, let's cross promote it all and make sure everybody goes and does all of these amazing things. And yeah, and I guess like also while you're here, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a nice review. 5 stars if possible, wherever you're listening. And yeah, you can follow the podcast on every social media at Pangolin Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those places. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm also on Instagram at the only Jack Baker. Because my name is so common and there are about 1,000 of us, so I thought I'd dub myself as the only one, just to really like boost my ego. So I am on there as well. If you want to follow along with all the things that I am up to, and yeah, having said all of that and done all of that promo, the last thing to say is, of course, a huge thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening along to our conversation. It's been absolutely fantastic to kind of, and like have you here. And of course, a huge thank you to you, Lyndon, for all of your amazing stories, fantastic work with the Youth Board. I'm so excited for the Youth Summit this year. I'm so excited to kind of learn more about the Youth Network and kind of, get kind of and come down and visit Chester because I always am. So I know that you don't run the whole zoo, but like I'm going to thank you for just being part of that as an organization because I'm excited to go there again. And yeah, so thank you for all of the amazing things that you do.
And thank you so much for this opportunity. Honestly, it's been amazing, and it's just been great to share the work of the Youth Board and everything that the zoo is supporting with us.
No, it's been fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much. And yes, I guess until next time, thank you once again for listening, and goodbye.